Hi everybody, my name is Alan. On behalf of the crew, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. You know, we've done a lot of shows and we've had just enormous numbers of extraordinary guests with extraordinary gifts. And I've talked a lot during the shows, and the guests have talked a lot, and I've talked a lot about it at the openings, about to experience the joy of living, to experience that joy of knowing that oneness, of the bliss of this human life. With all the trauma and the tribulations that go on in all our lives, and especially now, I mean, post 9/11, post Afghanistan, post what's going on now in Palestine and Israel, how often are we going to let that continue? I was just saying to some people yesterday, I mean, when is the stupidity of it all going to just be too much, and it's just enough is enough? That we cannot go on and one more time find a way to see the separation in us all. And to really seek out, in all religions, at the heart of all religions, there is that love, that connection, that brotherhood, sisterhood of humans, and the brotherhood and sisterhood of all living things, and the trees and the oceans and the dolphins and the whales. And when are we going to come to that experience? When are we going to really know the joy of the smell of the flower, the sound of the birds singing in the morning, instead of the sound of explosions and the sounds of anger? I mean, it just seems like it's just time for all of us to, whatever level we're at, to take one more step into that love. At least go into tolerance. But really, if we don't experience the root of it all, the knowing of it all, the truth of life, what people call God, then sooner or later, if we stop killing the whales here, we'll kill the dolphins here. If there isn't something with gooks or niggers, there'll be kikes, or there'll always be something that we're separate from, that's lesser than us, that we have to get rid of, that we have to change as a human species. And we're just destroying the joy that we can have in this life. And it's just enough. I mean, one more person who feels it necessary to strap bombs to themselves. And not only to strap bombs to themselves, but put nails in those bombs and ball bearings and go to public places and blow themselves up. 19-year-old men and women, children really, again and again, and people in tanks and people in planes and people dropping bombs. I mean, yes, there's a terrorist here, there's not a terrorist here, one is state-sponsored, one isn't. I mean, all those differentiations, at some point, the killing that we do of each other has got to stop. It's too stupid. And there's only one way that's ultimately going to stop, is when we experience the love. Love is the answer. And how can we experience that love? Every teacher, every master, everything that the religions were based on, say that that love exists, and that love is within, inside all of us. And we have to find a way to get there, and get there, and get there, and get there, and rub up against that love so much that we recognize that we're not any of the things that we think are separate. Those are so small compared to that love. So this is our forum. Bridging Heaven and Earth is about love. It's about the connection between us all. And it's time. And once again, we have a guest tonight whose life is dedicated to spreading that love, to spreading that understanding, to spreading that recognition, and to vibrate it in her own life. So whether she's talking or walking, she's a walking meditation. Margaret Donor is an author of an extraordinary new book, Infinite Darkness, Infinite Light. She's a past life regression therapist. She's conducted hundreds of past life regressions. And each one of those is to bring us to freedom. And freedom cannot exist without that experience of love. For any of us, whatever race, religion, color, age, sexual preference, whatever we think we are that love. And ultimately, we are all the same love. And that's the miracle of this planet, of this experiment here, of the Garden of Eden of Earth. So Margaret's going to talk about her book. She's going to talk about her experiences. She's going to share her love with you. And we also have an extraordinary video that we've shown before of Annette Cantor and Shanti Mafi doing extraordinary music that once again can lift us into that experience. So for all of us, I mean, I know that one way, in our hearts we know, whether we're in a plane, whether we're in dropping bombs, whether we're in a helicopter, whether we're strapping explosives to ourselves in the name of religion, in the name of country, something in us knows that we can all see the beauty of a butterfly, that we could all see that rose opening, to go in the ocean. Somehow, if we could get there rather than ball bearings shooting out at millions of miles an hour, we all know that that would be better. So it's just time. So as we normally do, join me in a short meditation, then we're going to have the video, and then Margaret's going to come on. And it's an opportunity for us all, so please join me in the meditation, just settle in, and we have an extraordinary show for you tonight. Thank you. Hi. So we're going to start tonight's show with a video of Annette Cantor and Shanti Mafi. They do this incredible fusion music, fusion of a Gregorian chant and a raga in Drupad style. So Annette and Shanti, it's really magnificent. Settle in. Wow, that was magnificent. So we're on the set with Margaret. Hi, Margaret. Welcome.
Hi, Alan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's great. So why don't you explain just like what past life regression therapy and why it's valuable to people and all?
I think that some people look at past life regression therapy as being sort of this mystical, odd experience that they can't relate to. And the first thing I like to say about it is that its intention is not really any different than traditional present-day therapy. The idea being that you have blocks created by experiences, and you try to release those blocks so that you can have a happier life. And that's really the purpose of it. The difference is that the blocks have begun in another lifetime. And so rather than just looking at the present day life, you have to go back in time and find out where this block occurred.
Some people would say that they don't know that they had past lives. How are you certain that you've had past lives and that other people have past lives?
Well, I think that I feel certain that I've had past lives because I came to this work through experiences that were not ingrained in me through either religious teaching or through somebody else, like a psychic, telling me, you've had these past lives. I came to believe in reincarnation because I met somebody, it was back in the 80s, who I've had many lives with, and upon meeting him, I began to have remembrances spontaneously of initially one life together that we had had. And at the time, I didn't really understand what it was. I had a pretty clear idea that these were, you know,
was this
past
during
life
what
feelings,
people would call during the day or dream state, or?
In this case, it was actually during the day. Yeah, and I don't know, I think people can relate to having met somebody where that they have a charge with that person. They either have a negative charge or they have a positive charge. They feel very drawn to the person where they'll say, I feel like I've known you forever, and they've only just met or known each other a short period of time. Or they'll feel, I really hate that guy, I hate that person, my boss or whatever, and I don't know why, but they really get under my skin. So I think most people have experienced meeting someone from a past life and having a reaction to them, but not necessarily knowing what that is. Once you begin to do past life work and you open that channel, it does come more easily. You find that as the channel opens, your previous lives do become more available to you. And I think that the reason that that's important is because so many of us are carrying so many blocks, fears, phobias that are being carried over from other lives. And we don't need to carry those around anymore. We can let them go And that's what past life therapy is really about.
And do you do it with hypnosis, or do you do it with, how would a session proceed?
I don't use hypnosis. I use a method that was established by Roger Woolger, who's the author of Other Lives, Other Selves, and it's a much more conscious method. The idea being that when you're conscious, you want to remember this experience. If you're in a deep hypnotic trance, sometimes you'll come out of that and you won't even remember the lifetime that you've just been speaking about. And we feel that that doesn't heal mind, body, and spirit as fully as being conscious. And the work that we do is really physical. If you've had physical trauma in another life, for example, if you have experienced traumatic rape in another life, very often what happens is you clamp down. And as a result of that, you can carry the energy block into the next body, or the next bodies. And it will manifest as disease. The root chakra, the second chakra, can be very closed down, and the person is still holding tension, perhaps constantly having tense thighs, or a tense, buttock, tense calves, tense legs, feeling a fear that actually ends up resulting in disease in this life as a result of something that's happened in a previous life. And in order to clear physical blocks, you need to do physical work. And so the work that I do, Roger Woolger's method, actually sometimes involves kicking and moving the body in order to re-empower it and to move the energy not only out of the mind but also out of the physical body. So
when you say kicking, you mean the subject?
Yeah, you're really kicking.
Yeah,
you can't. You can't. You do kick.
The subject.
You'll like kick. The patient will kick you. You might hold pillows or a mattress and say, go ahead and kick it and get the legs, because the legs might be frozen at first, literally frozen like that, and you want to get the energy moving again. So you say kick, 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 and you'll say, you couldn't do it in that life. That they held you down in that life, but now you can. What did you want to do that you couldn't do? I wanted to kick that son of a bitch.
Oh
I wanted
God.
to do it. Right? And that's okay, because that's what the person couldn't say. But they need to do it. Yeah. I mean, they
No,
needed
it's television then. No.
I think you could say that, right?
Yeah, probably. We'll let you get away with it.
And that's what the person needs to do. And it's like, what did you want to say? What did you want to do? And now you can free yourself. And you give the person the chance to do what they couldn't do in that life. And that action is extremely empowering.
And so that'll open up that blockage, and whatever was the manifestation of that disharmony or that disease can almost start healing at that very moment, right? Unwinding the tension from it.
Absolutely. And you want to kick or express or scream until you really feel that you can't anymore, that the energy is moved. And the client will tell you when they feel that. They can tell when they feel like their legs, the energy in their legs has changed, or their heart or their throat or whatever you're working on. And it's important to do that. So that's why this method that Roger teaches is so physical, because he feels you need to do that too.
And it does, to proceed in this, does there have to be a belief in reincarnation in different lives? Because some religions do and some religions don't.
I don't think you need a belief in it, but what I have found is that even for people that don't have a belief to begin, there is a pinnacle experience that can change or will change their belief system. There's a life that they will embody so fully if they continue long enough in the work. Maybe not the first time they do it. Maybe the first time they'll still feel the skepticism. They'll come out of it, even if it was an intense experience, and they'll say, oh, maybe I made that up. But if they come back, a life will come up that is so absorbing, that is so powerful, it can't be denied. And very often those are the lives that do have physical reactions, because you can't deny that feeling that's coming up in your body, that feeling in the throat, the neck, the back, and suddenly you say, oh my God, I've had this low back pain, and now I understand where it comes from. It's like everything begins to fall into place, and it becomes very hard to deny that.
And would you say there's an intelligence behind this universe and this particular experiment that would make this karmic experience happen? Now, why do we go through these lives? I mean, how does that work?
Well, I think that, you know, the idea that you do learn lessons is probably a valid one, or at least you certainly hope you learn lessons from all these experiences.
Why do you need to? Why do you like make all these mistakes? Why are you so dopey or so? I mean, why do we rape other? Why? I mean, how does that happen that we have to go through these lives to learn these lessons? Do you have a theory on that?
I have a theory on it, or at least something that seems to make some sense to me, and that is that some people will say, well, how do I know I'm not in my first life or whatever? And I think that there is a progression of the soul, that the soul goes through, to make it more simply understood, an infancy stage, a baby soul stage, a young soul, mature soul, an old soul. And that each of these stages, just like in one life, each of these stages have certain lessons attached to them, and each of these stages have certain behaviors, which is true in one life. I think it's also true in many lives. And so I think that in the beginning, because life is experiential, and because we don't understand that a flame is hot until we stick our finger in it, we spend our earlier lifetimes experiencing to understand what it is like to be in the body. And in these experiences, we have the experience of being the victim. We have the experience of being the perpetrator. We have the experience of being old, young, male, female, all these kind of things. And we react in a certain way to some extent, due to our soul age. And that it seems that in the younger soul ages that we are doing what you might say creating the karma, because of the fact that we are sticking our hand in the flame. We're saying, like a toddler, you have my toy, give it back to me. As a toddler, I'm not thinking, well, if I take that toy, that guy's going to bop me. We're just thinking, I want the toy. Mm-hmm. Then you get bopped enough, and then you learn, oh, if I take the toy too much, I get bopped too much. There are consequences through actions, through experience. And so I think that as the soul acquires experiences and it creates karma, it then reaches a point in maturity where it begins to feel that it wants to clear up that karma, that it realizes that the things that you've been talking about when you introduced this, it's had the experience of being poor, it's had the experience of being the warrior and the warred upon, and it realizes that suddenly that doesn't work so well anymore. Just like the toddler says, wow, I don't think I want to get hit anymore. I've been hit and I don't want to hit anymore. I'm tired, I don't want to fight anymore. And it begins to do what you might call karmic cleanup in a sense. And then eventually healing and realizing that we are all one in the old soul age, and eventually being able to, unless it chooses to come back, to not have to come back. So I do have a kind of a progression belief system, I guess. And I think people that are...
So is it linear? Would you say it's linear?
Well, I don't think time is linear. So I think our experience is linear. But in that, I think that the lessons or the experiences that we learn, we take on. Speaking from, you get into that because it's like, well, off the earth plane, there is no time and everything's happening all at once. But from our perspective, I do think that that we jump in time, but perhaps not in soul age. So we may, from the higher perspective, say, it would be really good for me to learn the lessons of this soul age in Nazi Germany. But the next life you come back and maybe you died in the 40s and you came back in the 50s, now you're a mature soul. And you may have been a baby soul.
So you wouldn't say it necessarily has to take each soul the same number of lifetimes? It isn't that, and so how would that work? Why would one soul be dumber than the next soul? Or take longer in terms of lives?
I don't know. I suspect it must have a similarity to one lifetime, where there's maybe a certain average, But then there are also, in one lifetime, there are what we call geniuses, and there are those that we call slow. And I think some energies, souls, perhaps are more attached to the earth plane and they enjoy it and they want to spend more time here and experiment more, whereas other souls perhaps don't feel as comfortable on the earth plane and perhaps are more drawn to leaving. So probably those choices are all individual to some extent, I would think, yeah.
And is your experience that when people clear these blockages, there's more of an opportunity for love and more of an opportunity to experience what I was talking about, like the oneness or the truth or God or that thing that's beyond our identifications with religion or country or...
Right. I absolutely do. And I think the most important thing that past life therapy can do for somebody is to get rid of ego identification, which is really what you're talking about, saying, you know, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Jew, I'm black, I'm white, I'm male, I'm female. When you have experienced many, many lifetimes, and when you've remembered all these lifetimes, and you look back and you say, oh my God, I was a Jew that last lifetime, and then I was a Chinese philosopher that lifetime, and then I was a Roman warrior, and I was black, and now I'm a slave owner, and you suddenly realize that it's a concrete thing that we're all one. Where is the division? Truly, not just some kind of esoteric point of view that yes, we're all one, but if in fact I go back and I look at a life where I was a Roman slave owner and I was whipping people as a Roman slave owner, and then I see somebody today who is doing something horrendous. And I say, well, is it worse what they're doing now than what I did back then? No, it isn't. The act of doing that is never all right. But the compassion that a person can feel for both the perpetrator role and the victim role is greater because they've experienced all those roles. And so I think the opportunity for forgiveness is greater. And how can you over-identify with being a Jew when you do a regression and realize you were a Nazi? You know, and I've met many Nazis.
Quite a problem.
It is a problem, but it's a wonderful problem.
Your belief system right down to it.
Yeah, and in fact, Roger tells a story of a client he had, a woman who was obsessed with hunting Nazis in this life as a Jew until she did a regression and found out she had been a Nazi.
So it's harder to hunt yourself.
Exactly. Right, isn't that unbelievable? And so the whole concept of evil also dissolves because we love to say that person is evil and is being drawn by some kind of evil to do what they do. And yet, when you realize that the person sitting next to you who you perhaps love was a Nazi.
Or you yourself were.
Or you yourself were Nazi.
Right.
Or whatever, how can you then judge? And that lack of judgment, I think, is what leads us ultimately to loving one another. When we suddenly get rid of our ego, and you know, you're looking at the Palestinian and you're realizing the last time around, you know, you weren't a Jew. How can you fight them? Whatever. So I think that is the greatest gift that past life awareness and regression can give to the world, especially right now, like you're talking about.
So what made you, with all this information, write a fictional book? Why did you think that was the best way to approach it rather than writing a non-fiction book describing what we're talking about? Would it be too boring? No.
Well, there's a lot of the non-fiction. You know, there is a lot of it. I mean, a lot of therapists write case histories. And
they sell to the other therapists.
Right, case histories. Partially. Partially. But I think that for me, this book is an expression in great part of my own experiences. As I mentioned, that I was back in the 80s and I met this man that I had these past lives with. And Shirley MacLaine, Out on a Limb. That was it. I had like one book to go to help me feel like, okay, you're not insane. This is actually something other people
Well,
experience.
not because of that.
Right, not because of that. You have other things maybe, but not because of that one.
I understand.
No, so Shirley sort of did that for a lot of us. I think the 80s.
Yeah,
the 80s
Kevin
was,
Ryerson was here. He's been a guest on the show, so he was the one who basically took her through
and
that.
he did for Shirley what Shirley did for me.
Right,
So in
right.
a way,
So
he did for me.
Right.
So exactly, and I think that, and for many of us, we've needed some support systems out there to help us through this spiritual journey in this culture that hasn't supported it for the most part. And I love the idea of writing fiction. One, as you said, to appeal to people who wouldn't normally read this kind of material. My favorite comments have been from like husbands who've been stuck with the book on airplanes or in the toilet or something like that, who tell me they can't put it down. I've gotten, people who have emailed me or called me and said, I'm still
in the toilet, but I have my cell phone.
Exactly, I can't leave this book. I can't leave it. And that's just great because they say, I don't believe in this reincarnation stuff, but once I got into the story and reading about the main character, I was hooked.
Even though people might see it as a love story and a beautiful love story, that the ideas will seep in?
Oh, yeah, because the whole main character is going through the dark night of the soul. She's encountering this experience and these images, and her own therapist is telling her, you're crazy. This is just something you're making up, and she's not getting the support, and it's her journey alone to uncover these lives that these people have shared and to heal them, and then eventually to find her own strength through the healing of it. That is really what propels people, I think, through the story, because they get hooked onto the main character, and it's written in the first person, so you could kind of, once you get hooked into her, she sort of becomes you.
So, were you consciously doing that I want to write about all these experiences, but I want to try to do it in a way and fictionalize it so the ideas couldn't, in essence, seep in and kind of come in through the back door?
I absolutely. And I write fiction. I'm a fiction writer. I'm also was a dancer and a choreographer, so I have that theatrical. I like to tell a story, and so I think that it's better suited to me, my personality. Than being
more
a scholar
dry case history and PhD.
I like the emotion. I like the emotion of life, and I like the emotions that people share, and I like to touch people on an emotional level. And so many of the experiences that I've had, I wanted other people to take the journey that I took. So I fictionalized that journey that I took and put it together as a whole. I said, here, take the journey with me. Feel the highs, feel the lows. I made sure that Victoria, the main character, was extremely human. She gets drunk.
What was her soul age?
What?
Her soul age?
I would say that she typifies a late mature soul, perhaps an early old soul. She typifies what would be the sort of culmination of the mature soul, which is that
what would be the characteristics of that?
Well, the consciousness of the karma, bringing the karma to the surface, knowing it, seeing it, understanding it, and being capable of healing it with love, not paying it back. Because the thing I believe that heals karma is pure and true forgiveness. It's not easily come by. Most people have a hard time forgiving someone. So getting to the point where you can look at somebody who's hurt you and hurt you in many lifetimes, and also look at how you've hurt them, and then say, I forgive you, truly I forgive you.
Is it possible that, some theories would look at it as that you're not capable of being hurt, like the Indians have an expression, if there's no place for death to enter, it won't. And the same way, if there's no place for bad energy to enter. I think certain spiritual paths approach it a little differently, that if you have enough experience of love, you've rubbed up against love enough, that you won't pick up that. So it's like there's what's forgiving what.
Right.
You know what I mean? Your experience.
I agree with you on an esoteric level, but I think that what I am interested in is what humans feel. what humans truly experience. And humans truly experience, at some point in some lifetime, a lot of pain. And they experience anger. They have had their villages pillaged. They've had their children and their wives raped in front of them. They've been tortured for their beliefs, burned.
We're quite a species.
We are quite a species, and they've had
really
these experiences. And what I have found is that while these experiences are happening to people, they don't get up from that experience when they're being tortured and say, "Oh, I love you," you know.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. I think Christ was teaching us. Christ was teaching us that forgiveness will burn the karma when he said, you know, forgive them, Father. I think that is true. But I think that the level that Christ operated on is not the level that most human beings are operating on in most lifetimes. And so we are carrying, you know, I'm interested in the true human experience, and the true human experience is one of great difficulty. And the idea to ignore that and to ignore the feelings that we really have and say, well, just love it away is not realistic. How do you get to that love? How, without faking it? You can't fake forgiveness. And if somebody is, you know, killing your children, you're going to feel revenge. And so the idea is, how does a soul get mature enough that it can go past the revenge and into the love? But it's a journey, and that's the journey of our many lifetimes. So
well, isn't that in essence what all the spiritual paths are about in one form or another? All the tools are used to go into that experience, to get into that experience of love, to
get into the higher experience of love. Absolutely. I'm not denying that that's not, it is the supreme experience. I totally agree with you, and I believe that it's the experience that all of us want, as you say, and all of us ultimately are searching for. But I believe that obviously all of us are not living it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I never noticed that.
Right. So to say to somebody, well, just rub up against love enough when they're in the midst of war and torture,
doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
at that point.
Right. So the idea is, I think, rather than get too lofty, is to really talk to the experiences that people are really having, and that's why I like to write. I like to write a flawed character, a human character, a character that gets drunk, that gets obsessed, that gets upset, that's going, help me, why, God, why am this happening to me? Which is the real human experience. And
well,
ultimately,
I mean, theoretically, Jesus said, Lord, why have you forsaken me? So it's not out of the question even the best of us, let's say, would have that, or Moses coming down off the mountain going, Christ, what is this mess we got here? Right.
I think that's the whole idea of the shadow. And one of the problems...
Why don't you describe that, people aren't familiar
with the shadow?
Yeah.
Well, I think before I started doing past life work, I used to hear this whole Jungian idea that you have this shadow side. And I honestly thought, I don't really have that much of a shadow side. I thought, well, I thought these dark sides. Well, I can't even steal gum. When I was a kid, I couldn't take that bazooka. So my shadow didn't seem really looming until I went into my past lives, until I uncovered my karma, and then I realized that I began to bump right up against the times where I had embodied the negative, what we would call the negative emotions of fear and greed and jealousy, anger, rage, control, and that I wouldn't be a 3D human being if I hadn't experienced those. And it's experiencing them and then moving past them, not wallowing them, and not experiencing them. I think one of the things that happens sometimes in the New Age movement is Roger Woolger, my teacher, has a wonderful way of talking about it. He says that a lot of the people don't want to look at the crap, they want to just pretend it's not there and just put whipped cream on top of all that, your shadow. Put whipped cream on it and just say, rub up against the light. But underneath, they're still in pain, they still have anger, they still have these shadow emotions, and they're not looking at them, they're just pretending they don't exist. True healing, it's like a wound. It's the analogy of the wound. True healing goes in, cleans the wound out, and then you can put the light in it. But if you try to just put the light on top of all that darkness, it's not really cleaned or cleared away. And so this,
well, there'd be different theories of how you're going to clean the darkness.
Right. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and I think they're all valid. And I think that probably many different ways are needed. There's not one single way that can clear somebody's darkness and fear. I think everybody needs to meditate. That's just a way of connecting every day a little bit to your higher self, being quiet, going inward. I think for some of these big karmic stories, the past life therapy is very important because it bumps you right up against it.
And how would you describe a big karmic story? What do you mean by that?
Well, by that I mean that I think we have major themes that seem to repeat, for example, or people that we take through many lifetimes with us, and we have created a lot of karma. And I know karma is a weird word, and people have very different definitions of it. And some people think of good karma and bad karma, and what does it mean? Or some people say there is no karma, and other people say it's just energy. So to define it right here, to give it a definition, all those are fine with me, but I'll just give it a definition. And let's just say that karma is when you violate universal law, and you violate that universal law by taking away somebody's free will. Okay, God will not take away your free will. If you as a human being say, do something that takes away someone else's free will, you create bad karma with them. For example, if you murder them, if you steal from them, they haven't given to you voluntarily, you take from them, you enslave them in some way, then you create a karmic bond with them. And then you have this relationship. Now it seems that the emotions around that are what create the charge that keep two people coming back. There's a lot of anger, a lot of intense jealousy or fear or rage. That emotion, that charge, seems to be what reoccurs lifetime after lifetime and keeps that, what we would call karma, or that energy.
And it has
alive.
To be the same person? I mean, can you go through that with another like person?
It generally speaking, seems to be the same person. Because the charge is between the two of you.
Person, we're not talking about, because we're talking about a person who's going through, like, say, 5 or 10 lifetimes. So it's almost like an energy, right? Because it's not one person.
It can be an energy, or it can be the same soul that you're repeating many lifetimes with. And you use that, the two of you. I like to actually look at it as a gift, because you are giving each other, even in the most painful situations, the gift of learning. So these two souls are sharing many lifetimes together. And that's why what's interesting is when you meet that soul again, even if you have what you might call bad karma, there's this intense attraction. You feel, you know this person, there's a certain amount of comfort, you've shared, just like in this lifetime, you shared the bad with them as well as the good, and you immediately feel very drawn to them. And that's how you can usually tell that it's somebody that you've had a tumultuous karmic relationship with, is by that charge, by that energy that exists between you. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that somebody, you can have had many lifetimes with people that were just much milder, and you haven't gone like this on a roller coaster with. And
so how would you respond to people? Would you be drawn to people if you... Does anybody not have karma they're dealing with?
I believe that when we incarnate as human and choose a human path, that karma comes along with it, that learning comes along with it, that energy comes along with it, that we begin on our similar path that we all take, and in our own way, in our own unique way, and that karma does come along with it, yeah.
So everybody who's in a physical body at this point has a certain level of karma, some more than others because of the age of their soul? Right. Is that what you're...
I would say that the only people that have absolutely no karma are those people who are at the end of their journey, in the very older soul ages, and ready to choose to leave the earth plane, have cleared their karma, And those souls that you might call like a transcendental soul who has chosen to come back and assist the earth plane, but is not necessarily carrying karma with them. I think that a soul like a Jesus, when Jesus forgave those who had crucified him, he could burn his karma with them immediately on the spot, and it wasn't necessary for him to enter into the human cycle because his level of love and forgiveness was enough to.
Did he come in with that as a child? I mean, was he?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to profess to be the
expert on
Jesus. But
come on, girl, give us a little Jesus information.
I mean, actually, I will tell you that I was a disciple of Jesus's. I had a life with him. It wasn't a glamorous disciple, but I had chosen to be. I was a blind. I was a deaf, mute boy, and I had my vision, and that's all I had. And I chose to follow Jesus around. That was a very profound regression for me. And I was raised by atheists. I had absolutely no Jesus connection at all as a child.
In this life?
In this life, I was raised by atheists.
You jumped in life.
No,
I can't figure out.
I know, that does happen.
Life
You should see it. You get a 5-day workshop with 40 people all doing lots of lives. You can really get confused. But you don't know where you are.
Right.
But in this life, I was raised by atheists, so I didn't have a strong Jesus connection. So when I uncovered this life as a deaf, mute boy, I was really surprised by it. But I chose to have that experience to not hear the politics and not be able to communicate. I shut down all my senses so that I could see his energy, and he would telepathically communicate to me. So I don't have what would be a scholarly knowledge of him, but I have an energetic sense of him and knowledge of him. And my feeling about Jesus was that, yes, he was a fully realized, incarnate of the God energy. And I remember saying that we were like moths to a flame. That was my feeling about being around him, was that when I encountered that for the first time, I just wanted to be there. I just wanted to attach myself to him and live next to him. And I think those of us that were the disciples, that was the feeling you had, because it was the closest on the earth plane that we were going to get to the remembrance of God.
Well, let me ask you this, just like we don't have much time left, this is the last question, say, why do some people recognize that and some people don't? I mean, obviously people chose Barabbas over Jesus, so he was crucified. That's how the story goes. So a lot of people, when it came down to votes, get him out of here.
Yeah.
So why do you think you didn't?
I think that has to do with this, how much fear a person is carrying. And I do think that there are times when people are so fearful that the light frightens them. The light frightens them more than the darkness, and they feel more comfortable with the darkness, and they choose that. But I don't think that means that they're evil. I think that means that they are fearful, and I think that's one of the things that happens, is that our fear blocks the light of God, and when we remove the fear, more of God's light comes in.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So we need to remove the fear, and we're coming to the end of the show again. And I just want to thank Margaret for coming, and she flew all the way in from New York just for a few days just to be on the show, and it's just been a delight having her here. And obviously, I'm sure you had an extraordinary experience. So if you want any information about Margaret, about other guests, about the show, about the foundation, call Alan, 805-687-2053. Good night. God bless you. Come again. We love you. Good night.